Welcome back to the Brown Paper Theology Podcast, my friends. I'm Will Wolf, and as you know, the mission of this podcast is to inspire people to get into the foundational texts of our faith and hear what God is still saying through them. Now today is a special episode, you guys, because today we wrap up the beautiful scroll we call Genesis. Though this particular portion focuses in on Joseph and his brothers, we have to remember that this family is continuing the story of humanity that we opened up with oh so long ago. Now wonderfully, Joseph's story begins with a reminder of that cosmic story that's been going on ever since we read page 1, and it closes by looking forward to its fulfillment in Jesus. There are so many cool elements to this whole tale that we couldn't explore, so I invite you to delve deeper into it and continue to hear the voice of the Spirit. Okay, with that said, let's get into the episode and hear all about Joseph and his brothers. But today, we're going to be doing Genesis.
Did you start recording?
I did, yes. Oh, let me get my phone. Genesis 37. Genesis 37 through 50, which is traditionally the story of Joseph. He's seems like the main character because he does have a lot of screen time, but it's really Joseph and his brothers. So it's their whole story. It's the next generation. Because there's another brother that really gets focused on throughout this story. It's Joseph and Judah, which is important because as we know, because we know kind of where that story is going, that the line of Judah, the line of David as a king, that's going to be the chosen line that God decides to work through. So it's interesting how this story focuses on Joseph. It seems like Joseph should be the one that sort of carries the story forward, the line of Joseph, but it's actually the line of Judah. And so this story kind of answers how that happens or why that happens. So all throughout it, we're going to really focus in on Judah as well. But before we get started, let's open up with a word of prayer. I forgot to do that last time, and let's do it this time. Lord, we thank you so much for today. It's such a gift. It's a gift to be able to just read your word. It's so, obviously it's not always easy to understand, but we at least have it. God, that's a luxury that a lot of the world just doesn't have. So thank you that we can open up the text and just read it and talk about it and think about it and learn about you, learn from you. And so I pray, Holy Spirit, that you would just be in this room. Jesus, you promised that where 2 or 3 are gathered in your name, you're right there with us. So you're here with us right now. And so I pray, as always, that you would be the central focus, that we would be looking forward to you as we read these scriptures, God, as we read this word. And Holy Spirit, please illuminate the wisdom that you want to hear, or that you want us to hear from it right now. So we just praise you, we thank you, bless every single person who's ever going to hear this. And we just thank you so much. You're so good. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys, so like I said, today we're going to be focusing on Genesis 37 through 50, which is the story of Joseph and his brothers. And, surprise, surprise, this has 3 parts. So the whole story is broken up into 3 parts. Any guesses as to how many parts those 3 parts are broken into?
3 more.
3 parts, exactly. So it's a 3-part story, and each part itself has 3 parts. Now, a lot of these stories that we've read, we've seen the cycle of Genesis 1 through 9 over and over and over and over again. It's taken different forms, but it seems like every story begins with this sort of Genesis 1, Genesis 2 thing where we have this new person, this new Adam or whatever, and then we have usually some sort of deception that happens. It's a lot like Genesis 3 at the tree. We have something that goes on with the brothers that causes a splitting, and then it results in a flood of decreation, but then God always uses that to recreate and begin the whole cycle over again. And that's exactly what we're going to see this time. So, like with the story of Abraham, each of his parts, it was like Genesis 1 through 9, again in his whole story. With Joseph, it seems like the whole thing is like Genesis 1 through 9, like from a macro level. And so this first part that we're going to focus on seems to really be focused on like Genesis 1 through 2. And then this central section is focused on Genesis 3 through like 5-ish. And then this last section is really Genesis 6 through 9. Okay? So there's going to be stuff that's happening, but it's all to serve this sort of purpose, this framework. So Genesis 1 through 2 is all about what a real human is, so true humanness. And if you guys remember, God's intention for humanity is that he wants us to partner with him to be his royal priesthood. So Genesis 1 has this view of humanity as kings and queens, and then Genesis 2 has this view of humanity as priests. And so when we look at those two things together, because they are supposed to work together, we see a royal priesthood is what God really desires, because he wants to, remember, unite heaven and earth. This is the big macro story. He wants to unite heaven and earth, and he really wants humans to partner with him in that project, to be truly human and to actually listen to him and not allow chaos to rule, but to instead rule over chaos. Does that sound familiar? Okay. All right, so Genesis 3 through 5, that's all about the deception at the tree, and then this secondary deception of the brothers, this repetition of things, which causes a splitting of the brothers. So this has to do with brothers. And then 6 through 9 is all about what? Do you guys remember how Genesis 6 begins? Or what the whole purpose of 6 through 9 is? It's probably one of the most famous. It's a lot of water.
Flood.
There you go. A flood event. All right, so it's a flood, which is this sort of decreative thing that God then uses to recreate. So if you think about the Joseph story as a whole, and if you guys are familiar with it, I've never seen that movie, Joseph the Dreamer or something. I don't know. So I don't know how accurate that movie is, but okay, well, there you go. We're all in the same boat. So, but if you guys can think of the Joseph story as a whole, you can kind of start to put together like where these things happen. I mean, there's a big emphasis on his brothers because they come to Egypt. Spoiler alert, they come to Egypt, and there's this whole thing that happens to them. And the flood one's a little bit confusing because there's no water in this story, but we'll get there eventually. So let's start with Genesis 37 through 41, is it? It's the first half, first portion of the story. All right, so it opens up this way. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. So these are the generations of Jacob. So we're going to start talking about his sons. So Joseph, being 17 years old, do you guys remember who Joseph's mom is? Or where Joseph is in the family line? It gets really confusing. Joseph is not technically the firstborn of all the brothers, but he's the firstborn of Jacob's favorite wife. So Jacob is really the 11th, but the firstborn of Rachel. So he's the firstborn child of Jacob's favorite wife. So he's 17 years old, and he was pasturing the flocks with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, which is his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. So he's a little bit of a tattletale. He's a little bit of a punk, but he is 17. Now Israel/Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he was the son of his old age. So there's some favoritism going on here. Now, if we think a generation back, and a generation back than that, favoritism, parents playing favorites with their children, really does not end in anything good. Abraham favors Isaac, and then Isaac favors Esau, and there's this whole just complex relational thing. It just doesn't end well. So we should be expecting something to go bad here. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. Actual Hebrew, it just says a variegated cloak. We actually aren't quite sure what that even means, but it's usually translated as many colors. It's just a fancy coat. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Okay, so we got this tension in the background. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. And he said to them, hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and you know what? My sheaf arose and stood upright. And guess what, guys? Your sheaves gathered all around it and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, dude, are you indeed to reign over us? or are you to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Okay, so this story opens up with this vision that Joseph has, and it's this vision of sheaves of wheat bowing down to his sheaf of wheat. There we go. You guys will have to forgive me.
We did it.
You say that every week.
12. Yeah, 11 of them, sorry. Yeah, so all of his brothers bowing down to him. Okay, so that's vision 1, okay? So we have this idea of one person being a ruler, okay? A ruler over his brothers. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I've dreamed, another dream. And behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you've dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father, he kept the saying in mind. Okay, so we have these two dreams. One is of wheat bowing down to Joseph, and the other one is the sun, moon, and stars bowing down to Joseph. Now that's a little bit different. That's a little bit of an elevated position. Now, can you guys remember anything about when? So in the 7-day creation scheme of Genesis 1, if you guys remember, we have day 1 is all about God separating the light and the dark into day and night. Day 2 is about the separation of the waters from the waters. Day 3 is the waters gathering around so that the dry land can appear. And then trees and beautiful plants and all that stuff. Day 4 is when God puts in place the sun, moon, and stars to govern over the day and the night. So what God did on day 1, which is to separate the light from the darkness, he then invites these creatures, this symbol, the sun, moon, and stars, to do the same thing that he was already doing. So he delegates rule to the sun, moon, and stars. So they rule over time or whatever. And day 5, it's birds and fish, which swim in the waters below and then fly across the waters above. And then day 6 is land creatures and God's crowning creation, humanity. And to humanity, he gives the authority to rule over the birds of the sky, the fish of the sea, and the animals, or everything that crawls on the land. So we have these two rulers here. We have the rulers above and the rulers below. Okay? The rulers of the celestial realm and the rulers of the terrestrial realm. Now it seems like, and it is true, that these, the sun, moon, and stars, are technically the firstborn of the rulers because they were created first. But what Joseph is seeing is that he, a human, those firstborn rulers are going to bow to him. Okay? That's a really elevated vision he's having. So it's less that he's just a ruler on the land. He's being depicted as like a cosmic ruler where the sun, moon, and stars themselves are going to bow down to him. So this is a really elevated image of humanity. So this adds a little extra picture to what God's true intention for humans are, where he wants humanity to literally rule alongside him over the sun, moon, and the stars. Now, Paul picks up on this in 1 Corinthians 6 when he says, won't you even judge over angels? So there's this hierarchy that God has in mind where even though humanity is like on the land, technically lower than the sun, moon, and the stars, God wants to elevate humanity to rule above them, which is really, really quite awesome. And I would like to talk about that more, but we're going to keep moving on. All right, so we have these two visions, which are very parallel to one another. Really, it's this one guy, he's getting bowed down to by his brothers / the sun, moon, and the stars. Okay, understandably so. His brothers are not super thrilled by that, or his attitude, his tattletale-ness. He's kind of a punk. So his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, you know what, I'll send you to them." And Joseph said, "Here I am." So he said to him, "Now go, see if it's well with your brothers in the flock, and bring me word about them." Now remember, Joseph, like, Jacob has to understand, I would think, if he was an aware person, that his other children don't like Joseph very much.
Right.
At all.
But, yeah, at all. But we've seen Jacob's past where, like, his daughter was taken and raped, and he just heard about it and did nothing about it. And then where his son, Reuben, as soon as Rachel died, Reuben slept with his concubine to, like, usurp his role as the head of the family. And Jacob just kind of heard about it and didn't do anything about it. So he seems like he's pretty unaware of all the stuff that's going on in his family. So he's not the most aware person. So he sends his son, who is very clearly hated by the rest of his brothers, and says, you know what? Go to them alone and just bring me word about them. So he sent him to the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, what are you seeking? I'm seeking my brothers, he said. Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock? And the man said, they've gone away, for I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. Now, when his brothers saw him from afar, remember, they're burning with hatred, and they come up with this genius plan. They say, you know what? Here comes this dreamer. Let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we'll say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we'll see what will become of his dreams. But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, come on, guys, let's not take his life. Shed no blood. Throw him in this pit here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. And so he said this because Reuben had this plan to rescue Joseph. So when Joseph came to his brothers, okay, listen to this, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. Now, the pit was empty. There was no water in it. So it's this cistern, this well, that should have water in it. And they chuck Joseph in there. So he gets thrown into the well. They strip him of his robe. And then they do this. They sat down to eat. So their brother is there in the pit. They're just like, oh yeah, everything's fine. They sit down to eat. And then looking up, they see a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Now, Ishmael is the brother of whom?
Abraham.
Son of Abraham. Yeah, brother of Isaac. So they're distant relatives, okay? They're coming from Gilead with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, and they're on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah, okay? We got to focus on Judah's sort of character development through the story. So this is the first instance that we're seeing Judah do something. And he said this, you know, guys, if we kill our brother, we don't gain anything from that. So you know what? Let's just sell him to the Ishmaelites. And let not our hand be upon him. I mean, after all, he is our brother. I mean, we can't kill him. We might as well just sell him into slavery and make some money, right? And his brothers, they listened to him.
So much better.
Yeah, so much better. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. And then they took Joseph down to Egypt. Okay? So we have Joseph, he's in the pit, and then he's being taken down to Egypt. So when Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, the boy is gone. Where shall I go? And they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, this we have found. Please identify whether it's your son's robe or not. Okay, so their original plan was to take the robe to tell their father that an animal had shredded him up, okay? What they do is they take a goat, they slaughter it, and they deceive their father with the blood of a goat. How did Jacob deceive his own father? Do you guys remember? Okay, yeah, the skin of a goat. Mm-hmm. And so what Jacob did to his father is now being done back to him in a different form. So he deceived his father with the skin of a goat. Now his sons are deceiving him with the blood of a goat. Okay. And they identified it and said, it is, I gotta turn the page, the old onion paper. There we go. Son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces. So his sons allow Jacob to draw his own conclusions, and they don't correct him. Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned his son for many days. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to the grave, to Sheol, to my son mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Now meanwhile the Midianites had sold him to Egypt, in Egypt, to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, the captain of the butchers. Okay, so Joseph, he gets his robe ripped off of him. That gets dipped in blood. And then he gets sold to slavery and taken down to Egypt. Okay, so we're kind of just left hanging. Jacob's here. He's just in slavery. He's in bondage. Okay? Then Genesis 38 acts as kind of a weird moment where we focus on Judah. It's like we take a break from the narrative as a whole and just focus on Judah. Now, this happened already when we talked about Jacob and Esau. After the initial Jacob and Esau sort of deception where he sold his birthright for a bowl of food, we have this weird break in the narrative where we focus on Isaac, and it's kind of a way to say, this is kind of a family pattern. This is kind of the way that these people treat each other. So it's not surprising that the story before happened. And so we're going to kind of take a break, focus on Judah, and it's going to answer the question of like, why are they doing this? What kind of people are they? This is the kind of people they are. So Genesis 38, and here we go. And Genesis 38 also acts as this whole story in miniature. So it's going to give us categories to then bring into the rest of the story and see kind of what happens. So as we read this story, let's just focus on what's already sounded familiar, and then we're going to focus on moments that kind of come back up. So, okay, it happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and turned aside to a certain Adullamite, whose name was Hira. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. He took her and went into her, and she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name She conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. Yet again she bore a son, and she called his name Shelah. Judah was in Chezib when she bore him. Then Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother." So, cultural context, if your brother died, you were supposed to take his wife in and take care of her. You'd conceive children, and then that, like the dead brother's line, would continue on in that way. But this guy, Onan's super wicked. Instead of doing that, he does not... So all he wants to do is have sex purely for pleasure, and then he deprives her of any children, okay? So God looks at that as wickedness, and Onan gets struck to death. And so we have a wicked brother, he gets killed. We have Onan, who's also wicked. He's out of there. And so Judah's like, man, I can't give this woman to my third son. I'm not going to have any children. So instead of doing the right thing, which is taking Tamar and giving her to his next son, because she needs to be taken care of. Like, she can't do anything on her own kind of thing. I mean, guys, this is thousands of years ago. Like, this is the culture. She has no power on her own, so she needs to be taken care of by someone. But Judah basically takes that away from her out of fear of losing his third son. So he tells her, just go live with your father, remain a widow in your father's house, till my son Shelah grows up, for he feared that he would die like his brothers. So Tamar went and remained in her father's house. So we have this poor girl who's lost 2 husbands, and she's going to be promised a third, but Judah doesn't want to give that third, and so she's just kind of like in limbo. So in the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. When Judah was comforted, didn't take him very long, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. And when Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep," she took off her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil, wrapping herself up, and sat at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown up, and she had not been given to him in marriage. So Judah is withholding something that she needs. And when Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. She's in disguise. He turned to her at the roadside and said, "Come, let me come in to you," for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, "What will you give me that you may come in to me?" And he answered, "I'll send you a young goat from the flock." And she said, "Could you give me like a guarantee that you're going to send it?" And he said, "Well, what should I give you?" And she said, your phone, your wallet, and your driver's license. Like, your signet, your cord, and your staff that's in your hand. And he gave them to her and went into her, and she conceived by him. Then she arose and went away, and taking off her veil, she put on the garments of her widowhood. Okay, so we have this woman who's disguising herself to deceive this like wretched father-in-law. Okay, so we have a disguised deceiver. Now, the previous disguised deceivers that we've met have disguised themselves to deceive for like their own gain, to trip people up. We're going to see if this deception is really for a good purpose. Now, remember, Judah is willing to let his entire family line die. Like, he has 3 sons. That's it. 2 of them have already died. If that third son doesn't take a wife, that's done. That's it. The line of Judah is done. Okay?
Well, it was until this.
Yeah, exactly. It would have been done until, yeah, exactly. So when Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adullamite to take back the pledge from the woman's hand, he didn't find her. Then he asked the men of the place, "Where's the cult prostitute who was at Enaim in the roadside?" And they said, "No cult prostitute has been here." So he returned to Judah and said, "Man, I have no clue where she is." Also, the place said, "There's no cult prostitute here." And Judah replied, "Ooh, you know what? Why don't you just let her keep the things as her own? Or you know what? Our reputation's going to be wrecked. You see, I sent this young goat, and you didn't find her." Okay, so we have sort of another goat deception. So we're kind of, these are familiar categories that we've seen, and then there's still parts of the story that we haven't seen yet. So about 3 months later, Judah was told, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has been immoral. She's played the harlot, is what I think it's King James or something. She's been a prostitute. Moreover, she's pregnant by immorality. Then Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned." As she was being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law. Just so you know, the man that these things belong to, this phone, this wallet, this driver's license, that's the guy who got me pregnant. And she said, "Please identify who these are, the signet and the cord and the staff." Then Judah identified them and said, "Oh my gosh, she is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." And he didn't know her again. Now when the time of her labor came, there were twins in her womb. Who were the last twins that we met?
Jacob.
Okay. And when she saw she was in labor, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a red thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." So the firstborn is tied to the color red. But as he drew back his hand, behold, his brother came out. And she said, "By this breach you've made what a breach you've made for yourself." Therefore his name was called Perez. Afterward, his brother came out with a scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. Okay, so craziness happening in this story, super important. We'll get to the main things that we need to take moving forward. Main thing we need to remember, Judah, not an awesome guy. He's willing to sacrifice, he doesn't care about anyone's reputation but his own. He really cares about his children, but it's in a weird way. He wants to hold on to them because he's afraid of their death. Not trusting in God, knowing that it's not Tamar's fault that these men died. They're wicked in the eyes of the Lord. So it's something that they're doing, not what she's doing. But he's petrified, he's terrified. So he's not giving her his son so that she can be taken care of. So what she does is she disguises herself to deceive, but it's a deception in order to rescue life. It's a deception in order to kind of trick Judah into doing what he's supposed to be doing. So Tamar is a righteous deceiver. That's a weird category.
There's a whole write-up in my Bible. It's called Tamar, the deceitful widow.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So she's deceiving, but it's not something to wreck life. She's deceiving in order to cultivate life, which is the opposite of what we've seen deceivers do. The first deceiver we meet is that serpent, another kind of weird disguised figure who's trying to trip people up. But now we have Tamar, who is playing the role of the snake, but to kind of outsnake the snake Judah to create life. So everything's getting twisted up on us. So Tamar is this righteous deceiver. She deceives with a goat. Her deception involves I before ye. Yes. Okay. With a goat. All right. Judah, he's like, man, my reputation is going to be ruined. Just let her keep everything, whatever. And then she reveals herself, and Judah says, you know what? She was actually more righteous than I am. She cares about right relationship more because I'm actually, like, she is responsible for allowing my family line to continue, which is awesome, which is cool. So,
What does that say? What was
deceives with goat.
Deceives.
Sorry. Deceives with goat. And then we have twins. So we have these two boys. The firstborn is tied to the color red, but the secondborn comes out on top. Whose story does that sound like? Jacob and Esau, exactly.
Yeah.
Jacob and Esau.
Jacob
Exactly.
was the heel grabber.
Yep, Jacob was the heel grabber. He's the secondborn. Esau, his name means hairy, but Edom, which is his second name, that's red because he says, give me some of that red stuff with his stew. So it's like we're looking backwards. The story sounds super familiar, but we also need to be thinking forwards because these twins, something happens with them that there's this subversion or the person that we think is going to be the firstborn isn't actually the firstborn. He comes out first, but his brother, who's technically the secondborn, is the first one who fully emerges. Right. So we have this twin switch up thing going on. Yeah. Switch up, power shift, okay? So if we take these categories forward, we should be thinking, man, this story is probably somehow going to involve someone being deceptive, but in order to preserve life. Okay, so we'll keep that in the back of our minds. We've already seen this kind of goat thing happen. And then we should think forward of like, okay, is anything going to happen with boys later on where there's this power switch up? This is where it seems subversive. So let's just keep that in the background, and then we're going to move forward. But for now, we know Judah, not a great guy. Hopefully this situation has sort of changed him a little bit. Now let's go back to Joseph. So Joseph had been brought, did all that make sense? Okay. Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. Now the Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. So Potiphar saw that everything was blessed that Joseph did. The text just told us that, the Lord was with Joseph, and so he blesses him. It's awesome. What Potiphar does is he puts the whole house under Joseph's control. Nothing is held back from him. He's like second in command. The only thing that's held back from him is Potiphar's wife, because it's his wife, you know? But Joseph was this really handsome guy. He's an attractive guy. He looked really good in the eyes, okay? And this woman saw him one day, and what she did is she grabbed a hold of his robe. Does that sound familiar? See good and take. See good and take. That's the same language of Genesis 3. The woman saw that the tree was good for food and desirable for gaining wisdom, and she reached out her hand, she took it and ate. And so now Joseph, who is handsome of appearance, good of appearance, he's like the forbidden fruit, and Potiphar's wife, she tries to take him and say, lie with me. And he's like, no, I can't do that. Nothing is withheld from me in this entire house. The only thing that's withheld from me is you, because you're my master's wife. And he says something super important. He says, how can I do this? How can I take you or lie with you and sin against God? Okay? So Joseph has this really good understanding that sinning against other people is the same thing as sinning against God, because humanity is made in God's image. So to sin against God's imager is to sin against the one he's imaging as well. And so he runs away. He's robeless, so he's naked. He's fleeing. And Potiphar's wife, she's not excited about that. She's very offended by that. So she waits and concocts this elaborate plan. When Potiphar gets in, she says, that Hebrew boy that you bought, he came in here to make sport of me. He came in to lie with me, but when I refused, he left his garment and he just ran away. Hightailed and left. And so this is kind of an interesting part of the story. If you were Potiphar and you had this Hebrew slave who attempted to sleep with your wife, what would probably be the initial reaction that you would want to do to that man? Kill him. He doesn't do that. He decides to put him in prison instead. So it's either he just straight up doesn't believe his wife that happened, but he has to do something for his own reputation. So he kind of like splits the difference. He doesn't quite believe his wife. He probably knows how his wife is. But he can't allow Joseph to remain there. So instead of killing him, he sends him into prison instead. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So now Joseph is in prison. And I'm sorry I'm going fast, but I got to get everything. So he's in prison again. Okay. But first he was sold into slavery. Now he's in prison. So he's going further and further down into the pit. And then he's just there. Okay. But the Lord is with him there. Just like he was with him in Potiphar's house, he's also with him in prison. And the prison guard, again, he just put everything in Joseph's hands. And whatever Joseph did, it just excelled. It was wonderful because God showed steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Okay, so we have Joseph in prison. He just came out of the house of Potiphar. Now he's in prison. And then sometime after this, the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and his baker committed an offense against their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh, he was ticked off with these two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard. Now remember, that's the prison where Joseph was confined. Okay. The captain of the guard appointed Joseph to be with them, and he attended them, and they continued for some time in custody. And then there was this set of dreams. How did the story begin? It began with two dreams. Now we have Joseph, who is at the lowest of the low. Okay, he's at his low point. He's kind of started up here, and he's continued to go down, 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 down. Prison. And now while he's in prison, there's going to be another set of two dreams. And if you guys remember, what's the thing that gets him out of prison?
Interpreting the dream.
But whose dreams?
Pharaoh.
Exactly. So there's two dreams that happen in the prison, and then it's Pharaoh's two dreams that get him out of prison. So dreams get him in, dreams are there while he's there, and dreams get him out.
Dreams.
Oh, dreams. Yeah. I'm not even going to correct that.
You know,
Dreams. Yeah. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I got to be honest, man. I misspelled dreams. Okay, so here are the two dreams. Joseph sees that these two men, they're downcast. He's like, guys, what's wrong? What's going on? And they say, man, we've had some dreams, and we don't have anybody to interpret them. And Joseph said something important. Again, he says, don't interpretations belong to God, guys? Tell them to me. So the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph and said to him, in my dream, there a vine was before me. And on the vine there were 3 branches, and as soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Now Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Then Joseph said to him, this is its interpretation. Would you guys know what that dream meant? No, absolutely no clue. No idea. But here's Joseph's interpretation. Remember, who did Joseph say gives interpretations? Okay, so Joseph, and God is with Joseph. So we have this idea that God is the one providing these interpretations to Joseph. So here's the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly when you were his cupbearer. Only please remember me when it is well with you, and please do me the kindness, show me loyal love, and mention me to Pharaoh, so I can get out of here. I was stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and even now I've done nothing to be here. So when the chief baker saw the interpretation was favorable, he was like, whew, hey, yeah. He said to Joseph, I also had a dream, and there were 3 cake baskets on my head. And the uppermost basket, there were all sorts of baked bread for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating it out of the basket on my head. Again, would you guys have any clue? No idea. And Joseph answered and said, this is its interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Ooh, sounds good. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head. Oh, sweet. But from you, and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat the flesh from you. Whoa. Okay. So at a first glance, those 2 dreams are incredibly similar. They have very similar elements. There's a lot of things going on. The one who's the wine guy, he gets like a wine dream. The baker gets a bread dream. So it's difficult to see what the differences between those are. But Joseph, remember who has the Lord with him, he's offering these interpretations. So it's showing Joseph's wisdom through God being with him. Now on the 3rd day, which just happened to be Pharaoh's birthday, he made a feast for all his servants and lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the head of the chief baker among his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Sweet, first dream fulfilled. But he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet, that chief cupbearer, he didn't remember Joseph. He just forgot all about him. All right. So this one, we have two dreams where Joseph offers a very wise interpretation. Okay, a wise interpretation. Now, after 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed 2 dreams. And these are his 2 dreams. They sound, again, incredibly similar. The first dream, these cows, 7 cows came up out of the Nile and they fed on the reed grass. Man, it was wonderful. But then 7 other calves who were super ugly, like the ugliest cows you've ever seen in your whole life. They came up and they ate the 7 attractive plump cows. That's a terrifying dream. I don't want to see cows eating cows in my dreams. And Pharaoh awoke. Yeah. And he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And then after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump, full ears. Again, seeing grain eat grain is a very odd dream to have. And Pharaoh woke, and behold, it was a dream. Yeah, and so in the morning his spirit was troubled. Mine would be too. And he sent and called for the magicians of Egypt and the wise men. And he told them their dreams, but no one could interpret them to Pharaoh. But at this moment, the chief cupbearer is like, oh my gosh, today I've been reminded of my shortcomings. He said, man, Pharaoh, remember when we messed up? The chief cupbearer and me, and you threw us into prison. Yeah, we had a dream there too. And we didn't know about their interpretation, but there was this one kid there who could interpret dreams. And it was awesome. And the way that he interpreted it, that's exactly the thing that happened. I was restored, and you killed the other dude. And Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they quickly brought him out of the pit. Okay, so remember, when was the first pit he was thrown into? The cistern. But now he's being drawn up out of the pit of prison. And so this whole time, even though it's taken different forms, it's like Joseph has constantly been in this pit. Okay? The whole time. He was in the pit when he was thrown by his brothers. He was in the pit when he was in Potiphar's house. He was in the pit in prison. But at this moment, he's brought up out of the pit, and he shaved himself and changed his clothes. He came in before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I've had a dream, and there's no one who can interpret it. Now, I've heard that you can interpret a dream when you hear it. But Joseph said, it's not me. Remember, it's not me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. And then he tells him his 2 dreams about the cows eating the other cows and the wheat eating the other wheat. And Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows, man, that's 7 years of abundance. The 7 good ears, that's 7 years of abundance. The dreams are one. And then the lean and ugly cows and the weird blighted wheat, that's also 7 years, but it's 7 years of famine. So it's as I told Pharaoh, God has shown him what he's about to do. There'll be 7 years of plenty, and there's going to be 7 years of famine. And it's going to be so bad that the plentiful years, they're going to be completely forgotten. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine that will follow, for it will be so severe. Now, the doubling, the two-ness factor of Pharaoh's dreams, means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. Okay, so this story began with one man having 2 dreams. Okay? And then there's 2 dreams in the pit, but it's one dream for each person. Remember, it's 2 dreams for Joseph, 1 dream for the chief cupbearer, and 1 dream for the wine guy. Baker and the chief cupbearer. And then there's 2 dreams again by one man. And we learn that when one person has 2 dreams, God has fixed it in place. It will happen. So, thinking back, if Joseph has had 2 dreams, that means this is a fixed thing that will happen, okay? God's going to establish it. It's going to happen. So let's just think about those 2 dreams, okay? The first dream is that his brothers are going to bow down to him. The second dream is that the sun, moon, and stars are going to bow down to him, and he's going to be this cosmic ruler, okay? Now, who had that dream? Joseph. Joseph had that dream, okay? Remember that. It's going to be important later, okay? Okay, and you know what? This is what Pharaoh should do. You should select a discerning and wise man, and you should set him over the land of Egypt. So you should basically put overseers over the land, take 1/5 of the produce, and store it up. Okay, this is a wise plan. Now, this food will be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are occur to the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. Now, this proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, man, since God has shown this to you, there's no one so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house. And the people, I missed a very important verse. Verse 38, Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this, in whom is the Spirit of God? Ruach Elohim. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there is no one so discerning and wise as you are. So what's linked, guys? Wisdom is linked to having the Spirit of God within us, okay? Now, what is the thing that if we're looking back, like Genesis 1, remember this whole story is how are we going to actually become, or how are we going to get real humans? So this whole story can actually go forward. Right now, we're on this weird, like, ricochet thing to try to get back to the beginning so we can move forward. So what God puts in the garden is his life, the tree of life, and the tree of the knowledge of good and bad. Now, having the knowledge of good and bad is essential to actually being able to rule and make good decisions. And so this tree that God said is temporarily off limits is something that he wants to give humanity. Remember, it's not the fact that like eating it, obviously, it's not the fact that eating it is what was messed up. It was that they took it on their own terms. God wants to give it, but humanity took it instead. And in 1 Kings 3, we see Solomon, he asks God, he says, give me a discerning heart to know the difference between good and bad. And God is absolutely floored by that. And so God doesn't want to withhold that tree forever, that fruit, but it's about him giving it, giving it, giving it. And now we see that the Spirit of God, having the Spirit of God, is linked to having that wisdom. Okay? So now we're kind of talking about like New Testament stuff, where Paul says, who knows the mind of God but the Spirit of God? It's all about spiritual wisdom in the beginning of 1 Corinthians. And so what Paul is saying is that the thing that we really need to be real and true humans is God's wisdom. And how else do we get God's wisdom but by being filled with his Spirit? Okay? So that's where this is all leading. But we're just getting the categories in the OT. So when we get to the New Testament, we're like, oh, that's how they got here. That's how they got here. Okay. Make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. And again, just as what happened in Potiphar's house, Joseph becomes second in command over all of Egypt. Okay? So I've set you over the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. And, guys, hear this, clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he made him ride in his second chariot. So the story began with Joseph being ripped of his robes and chucked in the pit. And this part of the story ends with him being lifted out of the pit and being given a new set of clothes. And so it's like we've come full circle to now Joseph's story is kind of back on track. Back on track. And he made him ride in his second chariot, and they called out before him, bow the knee. Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I'm Pharaoh, and without your consent no one shall lift up hand or foot in all of Egypt. And Pharaoh gave Joseph a new name, Zaphanath-Paneah, great name, and gave him in marriage to Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Now Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh the king. So it's been 13 years since the beginning of this story. Okay? And he goes over all the land. Okay? And he gets food. Every city he goes to, he does that whole 1/5 thing. They store up food for the famine. And there's 7 wonderful, amazing years, so much that all the grain that they stored, it couldn't even be measured. They just stopped keeping track of it. But before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my hardship in my father's house. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. And so this story ends. We have 2 dreams. Joseph restored. And we have 2 sons. Forgetfulness and fruitfulness. Now, if we have something going on where we know, from the Tamar story, we have 2 boys and there's a sort of power shift. Then we just got mention of 2 sons. Maybe we should keep an eye on these 2 sons and see what happens to them later in the story. Okay. All right, so that's the end of the first part. Now, the second part is 42 through 44. And it's all going to be doing, or 45-ish. Okay. Now, we just had the Genesis 1 and 2 thing where we see Joseph. He goes through a lot of flood events where he's like decreated in the pit and then restored and all that stuff happens. He gets deceived. But it really serves the purpose to go full circle to get us back to this sort of true human. He's given linen robes like the high priest wears in the tabernacle and temple, who's this image of what a true human should be. And so that's kind of to serve the purpose of getting back to this Genesis 1 through 2 spot. Now we're going to continue on and see what happens with his brothers. So the famine's raging over all the land. Egypt's running out of food. Canaan, that his brothers live in, they're running out of food. And when they see that, Jacob looks at this is hilarious. When Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, "What are you doing just looking at each other? Get your hands out of your pockets and go." And he said, "Behold, I've heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might come to him. So Benjamin, you guys remember who Benjamin is?
Rachel's other son.
Yeah, Rachel's other son, who is the youngest. Is the youngest. Now remember, Judah wouldn't allow his youngest son to do anything, right? Mm-hmm. And now Jacob's doing the same thing. He's like, Benjamin will not go. Okay? So what Benjamin has happened, he's sort of taken up the slot of Joseph as the favored son. Joseph's no more. Benjamin is the second born of Rachel, who's Jacob's favored wife, and so Benjamin's kind of like the new Joseph in his mind. And so there's favoritism going on. Last time, favoritism didn't end well for Joseph. Let's see how it goes for Benjamin. So they go to the land of Egypt. Okay, here we go. This is important. Now Joseph was governor over the land. He was the one who sold all the people of the land. Oh, sorry. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Okay. So, dream 1 fulfilled. The sheaves of wheat have bowed to Joseph's sheaf. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized him, but he treated them as strangers and spoke roughly to them. "Where do you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." Granted, it's been like 20 years since they've seen each other, so they probably wouldn't recognize their sibling, especially in all of his Egyptian regalia. And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they didn't recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them, and he said to them, "You're spies. You've come to seek the nakedness of the land." They said to him, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We're all sons of one man. We're honest men. Your servants have never been spies." He said to them, "No, it is the nakedness of the land that you have come to see." And they said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and he is no more." But Joseph said to him, "It is as I said to you, you are spies. And by this you shall be tested, by the life of Pharaoh. You shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother while you remain confined, that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you. Or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies." And he put them all together in custody for 3 days. Okay, so we have an unrecognizable Joseph testing and sort of being deceptive to his brothers. Do we have categories for that in the story so far? For a disguised deceiver? Tamar. So Joseph's sort of taking up that role. He is kind of disguised. I mean, he's a completely different person. And he's sort of forcefully deceiving his brothers to kind of test them, to see if they're still the same people they were 20 years ago. So he's put them all in prison. And on the 3rd day, Joseph said to him, "Do this and you'll live, for I fear God. If you're honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined where you are in custody, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your households. And bring your youngest brother to me." Okay, so they bought grain, and Joseph said, "Here's what's going to happen. One of you is going to remain here, and the rest of you, you're going to go back home." Okay? And when they leave, remember, they all bought their grain. And when they leave, Joseph puts the money back in their grain sacks so that when they get to where they're staying at night, they open it up and they start freaking out. They're like, "What the heck happened?" Okay? But let's think of the situation that Joseph just created. What he created was his brothers, who are now rich because they have all their silver back, but one brother is left behind. So they left one brother behind, but they got rich off the deal. What are they going to do about that? Does that sound like a familiar story that they've already done to Joseph? That's exactly what they did to him. They sold Joseph to slavery, left him, and they just went on their merry way. So Joseph's testing to see if I'm going to recreate this exact same situation and see what you guys do about it this time. So Simeon, he's there. He's bound up. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain and to replace every man's money in his sack, and he gave them the provisions for the journey. This was done for them. Okay, so Simeon's there. They've got their money back. Let's see what goes on. So they went back to Jacob, their father, in the land of Canaan, and they told everything that had happened to them. Remember, the last time this sort of situation happened, they didn't say anything to their father. They were completely deceptive. But now, they lay it out all on the table. They are actually honest with their father this time. So it seems that the past 20 years actually have changed these brothers. And so what they tell him, they say, man, we can't go back for Simeon unless Benjamin comes with us. And Jacob's like, dude, that's not happening. I'm already bereaved of one child. Joseph's no more, and I know you guys had nothing to do with that. But Simeon, he's no more now. And if you take Benjamin, I can't live with that. Like, this always happens to me. What the heck? But then Reuben said to his father, here's a great idea. You know what? You can just kill my 2 sons if I don't bring them back to you. If you're bereaved of sons, what you can do is just bereave yourself of grandsons too. Doesn't that sound like a good idea, Dad? Put him in my hands, and I'll bring him back to you. Reuben doesn't make the best decisions. He's kind of an idiot. And for his point, Jacob doesn't even acknowledge that. He just says, my son shall not go down with you. For his brother is dead, and he's the only one left. If harm should happen to him on the journey that you're about to make, you'll bring my gray hairs down with sorrow to the grave. But the famine just keeps raging. It keeps on going. And Jacob says, man, you have to go buy us a little bit of food. But Judah said, this guy said, if we don't bring Benjamin back, we won't be able to see his face. We're not going to be able to get any more food or anything like that. But if you will not send him, we will not go down, for this man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with me. Okay. But then Judah said to Israel, his father, here's a pivot point. Remember, Reuben said, you can kill my 2 sons. But Judah said, send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will be a pledge of his safety. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. But look, if we had not delayed, we could have gone there and back twice. Okay, so Judah is volunteering his own life for Benjamin. Okay, this is really important. Remember, Judah cared way more about his own life with the whole Tamar situation. He cared about his own reputation and his own family line continuing, like he didn't want to leave his sons. But now he's saying, you know what, Dad? Take me. Like, I will lay down my life for my brother. Does that sound like anybody else further down from the line of Judah, doing for all humanity? Exactly. Then their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry a present down to the man. A little balm and a little honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double the money with you. So double the money meaning you have to pay back. Pay it for the first round, that somehow you got the money back, and then you have to pay it again for the next round. So they took this present, and when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said, man, like, we're going to have lunch. It's going to be awesome. The brothers started freaking out. They're like, dude, what the heck? This super powerful guy, he wants to have food with us. That's terrifying. He must know that the money ended up in our sacks the first time. Like, that's what's going to happen. And so they try to kind of cover themselves. They talk to the steward of Joseph's house, and they're like, dude, like, this thing happened. Like, we're being honest, okay? All the money was in our sack when we left. We thought we paid for it. We've brought all that money back and additional money for this new thing. But the steward says, no, I got your money. God's blessed you. And then he brought Simeon out to them. So the brother that was left is now brought to them. And when the man had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, they washed their feet, given them their donkeys' fodder. They prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon. They heard that they would eat bread there. Now when Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present that they had with him, and bowed down to him to the ground. Again, And he inquired about their welfare and said, is your father well? That old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive? And they said, your servant our father is well. He is still alive. And they bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his own brother. And he said, is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son. And then he ran out and he started weeping. Okay, it's been 20 plus years since he's seen his brother. He's overjoyed to see him, but he breaks down in tears. He controls himself, and he says it's time to eat. So what he did was, unbeknownst to them, he actually lined them up from oldest to youngest, and they're like bewildered by that. They're like, how does this dude know our birth order? And then he kind of starts to create this situation to test them. He gave them each like a single portion, but Benjamin, the now youngest, the favored son now, he gives them 5 times more. And so he's trying to create the same thing, this sort of singling out of the favorite to see how his brothers are going to respond. And they drink, and they get drunk with him. And then he commanded the steward of his house, fill the men's sacks with food as much as they can carry, and again, put the money back in the mouth of the sack. But this time, put that silver cup, my silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest of Benjamin's, with his money for the grain. And he did as Joseph told him. So they leave, and then Joseph says, hey, go after him now and accuse them of stealing my cup. Remember, this cup is what I use to do divination. Now that word divination, it has the same root as serpent, nachash. So it says, don't I do this to act like a snake, to practice snaky things? So you have done evil in doing this. So remember, what Joseph is doing is he's acting like the snake to test them, to see what they're really made of. He's a disguised deceiver that's trying to kind of bring out what's true about them, okay, to test them. So when he overtook them, he spoke to them these words, and they said, why does my Lord speak such things as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Look, we brought the money back last time. Why would we steal it this time? And listen to this. Whichever of your servants is found with it shall die, and we shall be your Lord's servants. Okay, so what they say, I should have been filling this in. I apologize. I'm sorry. Joseph, oopsies. Yeah. I mean, all this is kind of the same thing. Joseph, testing brothers.
Wow, the repetition.
Yeah,
for sure.
testing bros. With
That money back.
that's a grain sack. This is the money bag, and then the cup. Okay, so we have this test. He's testing them. They say this. They say, whichever one of you, or whoever you find it with, they'll die, and then all the rest of us will be your slaves. Okay, whoever has it's going to die. We'll be your slaves. And the servant said, you know what? Let it be as you say. He who is found with it shall be my servant, but the rest of you shall be innocent. Okay, so he kind of takes their words and twists it. Instead of, you guys will be my slaves and that person will die, he says that one will be my slave and you guys can go free. Okay? And then each man quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack, and he searched, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack, which means Benjamin would be the slave, and the brothers would go home with all their cash. Does that sound like the same thing? Again, it's another test. It's the exact same situation. And when Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there. They fell on the ground. They fell on the ground. Oops, sorry. Hang on. I'll fix that in a second. They fell on the ground. Joseph said to them, What is this that you have done? Don't you know that a man like me can practice divination? And Judah said, what shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he in whose hand the cup has been found. But he said, whoa, far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. But as for you, go up in peace to your father. Then Judah went up to him and said, O my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ears, and do not let your anger burn against your servant. for you are like Pharaoh himself. My Lord asked his servants, saying, have you a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a young brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. We said to the Lord, the boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Then you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see my face again. When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, go again, buy us a little food, we said, we can't go down there. If our youngest brother goes, or can't go with us, if our youngest brother goes with us, then we will go down. For we can't see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm happens to him, you'll bring my gray hair down to the grave. Now, therefore, as soon as I come to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, then, as his life is bound up with the boy's life, as soon as he sees that the boy is not with us, he'll die. And your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant our father with sorrow to the grave. For your servant, me, I, Judah, became a pledge of safety for the boy to my father, saying, if I don't bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father all my life. Now, therefore, please let your servant, me, I, Judah, remain instead of the boy as a servant to my Lord, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father. Okay, so at the center of the story, we have Judah offering himself. Instead of just taking the money and running, they all go back, and they're honest with it, and they're ready to accept the consequences of whatever it is. And Judah, he even says, look, we can all be your servant. That's fine. That's okay. That's what we agreed to. And then Joseph's like, no, only the one that took the cup will be the one. So Benjamin, you're the one that has to be the slave. And Judah says, no, let me take that instead. Let me take that instead. And so Judah, we see a huge shift in Judah's character from these 2 stories, right? He's so willing. All he cares about is his own reputation. And he's willing to he's willing to sacrifice his own family line for his own self, his own reputation. But now he's willing to sacrifice his own life so that his brother can still live, which is awesome. So Judah, there's a big shift. There's a big shift in Judah. Okay, then Joseph, he couldn't control himself before all who stood by him, and he said, guys, everybody just get out, get out. And so he's by himself, he's with his brothers, and he reveals himself to them. He says, I am Joseph, guys. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence, as you would think. This dude that you just sold into slavery 20 years ago is now second in command of Egypt. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. And they came near, and he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. But don't be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there's 5 years to come. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to keep you alive, many survivors. So it was not you that sent me here, it was God. And he made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house and ruler over the land of Egypt. Hurry, go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You're going to dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children and your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. And I'll provide for you. Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. After that, his brothers talked with him. Okay, so if we're tracking the Genesis sort of melody, in Genesis 4, that's the story of Cain and Abel, where these brothers, there's this extreme jealousy that occurs, and Cain rises up and kills his brother, and there's this separation of the brothers. But in this story, it's all the brothers being reunited now. So it's like a reversal. It's a surprising reversal to where now all the brothers are reconciled and they can continue on. So the brothers are reconciled. and Cain and Abel reversed.
Can you take that card?
Absolutely, please. It's a nice card. It's a nice card. Yeah. Yeah, $5. Yeah. 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 Okay.
Can I have one? Oh, water fountain. We'll get some of it.
Okay. Almost there. Almost done.
No, you're fine.
All right. So we have the story of the brothers kind of reversed, and really this is. Delicious water. All right, so now we're going to be on this third part of the story. Now, this is the Genesis 6 through 9 part of the melody, which is all about the flood. Now, there's two images given for the chaotic sort of nothingness in the Bible, the first two opening pages. Page 1 is all about there being too much water and not enough land. And then page 2 is all about there being too much land and not enough water. And so the flood is sort of a too much water situation, but a famine is like the parallel image of, instead of like a watery flood, it's a dry flood. And so the backdrop of this entire thing has all been a flood of a famine. So I just said that the two opening pages of the Bible, page 1 is all about too much water, not enough land. Page 2 is too much land, not enough water. Those two things are parallel to one another. And so the flood is all about way too much water. But a famine is like way too much. Yeah, exactly. So those two things can mean the same thing. And when Joseph goes down to preserve a remnant of humanity, that's flood language. That's flood language. That's flood language. What did I just say? So Joseph is in Egypt, and he's sort of acting as this new Noah. He's storing up a lot of food. We're going to see him store up a lot of animals. And he's going to preserve life while he's there. And his family is going to be in this place called Goshen, which has, so the word for garden is gone. And the word, it's like GN in Hebrew. GN, gone. Goshen is like GSHN. And so these two things are parallel. So when his family is living in the land of Goshen, it's like they're living in the garden. And so the Bible Project has a to try to create the same feeling in English. It's like garden and Garshin. So when we hear Goshen, we should think the garden land. So they're going to be there. And that's where Joseph said, hey, you guys are going to move down, you're going to live in Goshen, you're all going to be okay. So the last panel opens with Jacob being told that Joseph is still alive. He basically dies because he's like, oh my gosh, what the heck? His heart becomes numb, for he did not believe them. His heart stops. But when they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said to them, he gets revived. He's like, oh my gosh, Joseph is alive. That's amazing. And so they all go down to Egypt. So Jacob and his family, Jacob and Co. go to Egypt. Yeah, Jacob. Egypt. Now, there's this record of 70 people. So it's 70 people that go. Again, if we think back to Genesis 10, which is everybody's favorite part of the Bible, a massive genealogy, it's 70 descendants of Noah's family line. And it's what breaks into it's called the Table of Nations. It's about 70 nations. And now with this reference of 70 is saying that the fate of all the nations is bound up with the fate of this family. Okay? And that is the story of the Bible. God picks up, he out of the scattering of Babylon, he picks the one dude, Abram, and he says, through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. And so the story of Israel is about God picking and choosing one family line to do the thing that he needs to do, so then all that blessing can go back out to the nations. And so this reference is reminding us of that. Okay, now the main part of this event, he settles in Egypt. Jacob and Joseph reunite. It's this amazing thing, this weeping. It's great. Jacob blesses Pharaoh. He says, my life's been really hard. It sucked. He blesses Pharaoh, which is cool. They settle in Goshen. And Joseph does this really wise thing. All the people keep coming to him. They're like, we don't have any money anymore. So he says, okay, give me your livestock. They said, we don't have any livestock anymore. We can just sell you ourselves, and we'll work for you. We'll work for Pharaoh. And he says, that's a great idea too. And they're okay with that. They're okay with that, to preserve the seed. Now, after that, we have this central portion, which is all about Jacob's final blessings to his family. And there's so much in this, but what I want to do is focus on two things. One, the first blessing narrative we have is when Joseph brings his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and Jacob says, okay, those two sons, they're actually going to count as my sons now, which that's very odd to me that would happen, but Joseph's okay with it. And what he does is he blesses Manasseh and Ephraim, but what Jacob does is he switches them by doing that. So Joseph brings them up to him, and it would be at Jacob's right hand that the firstborn Manasseh should be, and then his left hand that the secondborn Ephraim should be. But what Jacob does is he switches his hands and puts the secondborn ahead of the firstborn. Okay. But it is a shocker, but it's also like, Jacob, did that work really well for you last time? Yeah. Like that you yourself forced the power shift? So it's kind of like ambiguous. Like, is this actually going to be a good thing? Not learning at all. It's like, Jacob, you play favorites. Now you're going to have this weird power dynamic for these two boys. How are they going to interact with each other now? So Ephraim has like the blessing. Manasseh gets blessed too, but it's really focused on Ephraim. Okay. Then we have Jacob's final blessings to his sons. And it's this massive poem in Genesis 49. And I would love to talk about all of them, but what I really want to talk about is the blessing to Judah and the blessing to Joseph. Okay? Do you guys remember what the Eden blessing is? It's be fruitful and multiply, okay? Fill the earth and subdue it. So the Eden blessing it's that two-part thing that Jacob stole. It's about abundance and authority. Abundance and authority. Okay, so let's look at Judah, who is the fourth born. Okay, the first three, they've all made their mistakes. Reuben slept with his dad's concubine, so he's like, psh, you out. Simeon and Levi, they killed an entire town for loot, and Jacob's like, psh, y'all out. And so Judah, who's technically the fourth born, kind of gets like the firstborn blessing. This is 49 verse 8. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons, who is your father's sons? Who would that be? His brothers? Your brothers shall bow down before you. Whose dream was that? Joseph's dream. So Joseph's dream was that his brothers would bow before him. And remember, Joseph had two dreams. The brothers and then a cosmic ruler. And now what Jacob is doing is shifting that to Judah. He says, your brothers will bow down to you. And if we're thinking in the categories, that now Judah is going to be the one to sort of inherit this kind of cosmic ruler thing. And that's true, because like who is the true cosmic ruler? It's a Sunday school answer. Jesus. Jesus is the true human that gets elevated where everything bows down to him. Things in heaven and on earth and below the earth, like everything is bowing down to Jesus. Jesus comes from the line of Judah. Okay? So let's just keep listening. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down, he crouched as a lion and as a lioness. Who dares rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until the one to whom it belongs comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Binding his foal to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine, he has washed his garments in wine, and his vesture in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. And so what is given to Judah or pronounced over him is this authority language. Your brothers shall bow down to you. The scepter shall not depart from Judah until he to whom it belongs comes. And to him shall be the obedience of all the peoples. Who are we thinking? Sunday school answer again. Jesus. Awesome. So Judah is going to be the one through whom the authority goes through. And then it's going to result in this sort of cosmic king. The one whom the brothers bow down to, which is mimicked and mirrored by the celestial rulers. This is all like cosmic, crazy language in this blessing here. Okay, so we have the authority given to Judah. Now let's go to verse 22. Joseph is a fruitful bough by a spring. His branches run over the wall. His archers bitterly attacked him, shot at him, and harassed him severely. Yet his bow remained unmoved. His arms were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. By the God of your father who will help you, by the Almighty who will bless you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that crouches beneath, blessings of the breast and of the womb. The blessings of your father are mighty beyond the blessings of my parents, up to the bounties of the everlasting hills. Maybe they be on the head of Joseph and on the brow of him who is set apart from his brothers. So what's all that language? Blessings of the land, blessings of heaven, blessings of the deep, blessings of the breasts and of the womb, blessings of your father. That's all about abundance. So the blessing of abundance, so Joseph gets the abundance. And Judah gets the authority. But those two things are meant to be shared by all of humanity. Remember, that's the Eden blessing is be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. That's given to humanity as a whole. And so this sort of like muddies the water. It's like, who are we actually looking for? It's someone who combines the blessing of Joseph and the blessing of Judah. But how is that possible? If you're from Judah, you can't be from the line of Joseph. And so that's kind of a tension that we have to look into. And again, I would love to get into that deeper, but we got to keep going. Basically, I think what it comes down to is Bethlehem, which is from where Jesus comes from, is tied to this place called Ephrata. And Ephrata is tied to Ephraim, and Ephraim is tied to Joseph. And so where Jesus comes from is his tie to the sort of Joseph abundance. So he's from the line of Judah, but he's like from a place that's tied to Joseph, in the land of Bethlehem. And David is too. Okay, so we have the blessing, and this sort of blessing to the sons is going to kind of set the tone for how they interact with each other later on. And it's the same thing that Noah does to his three sons after the flood. He blesses them, he blesses two and curses one. And he sort of sets the tone for how this family is going to interact with one another. Now Jacob's doing the exact same thing with his own sons. And so as we move forward, we're going to see these sons interact in certain ways. But the tension is really between Joseph and Judah. Okay, so after that blessing, Jacob, he dies, but before he dies, he commanded Joseph, he said, man, make a covenant with me. When I die, I don't want to be buried in Egypt. I want you to bury me in the cave of Machpelah, which is where Abraham and Sarah are buried. It's where Isaac and Rebekah are buried. It's where Leah is buried. It's this land, this piece of land that we own in the land of Canaan. And it's this image of the garden. It's this fruitful, beautiful grove of trees, but there's a tomb there also. And so it's like Jacob is being buried in Eden after he dies. And so he made that promise, and Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And he commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for it, for that is how many are required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. Oh yeah, one thing I did want to mention. Okay, so Jacob basically adopts Joseph's sons into the family. Okay? Are Joseph's sons purely Israelite?
No,
they're half Egyptian. And so the family of Israel, at its inception, is already looking forward to incorporating all of the families of the earth within it. Remember, it's Israel and Egypt in one family. And so it's looking forward to, that's what Jesus is doing, incorporating us into his family. Okay. So mimicking that, when Israel dies, when Jacob dies, the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. And so there's this coming together, this joint grief. And when the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph spoke with the household of Pharaoh, saying, if I have now found favor in your eyes, remember, like taking care of the entire country, please speak in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, my father made me swear, I'm about to die. In my tomb that I hewed out for myself in the land of Canaan, there shall you bury me. Now therefore let me please go up and bury my father, and then I will return. Pharaoh said, go up, bury your father as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father. With him went all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders in the land of Egypt, as well as all the household of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. And there they went up with him, both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great company. It is wild. What does it sound like? This family leaving Egypt to go to Canaan. What does that sound like?
Oh, Moses and all that.
Exactly. So this is like what the Exodus could have been.
Could have been.
It's what could have been, where it's Egypt blessing this family, taking them back to the land of Canaan. Whereas in the Exodus story, we see the story is completely flipped. Pharaoh's freaked out by this people, and he's chasing them, and it's God delivering them. And so it's like this hopeful thing of, man, this could have been amazing. This could have been awesome, where people recognize God's blessing on this family, got in on the blessing by blessing them. And what's important is this whole company, when they get to the threshing floor of Atad, the Canaanites say, this is a grievous mourning by the Egyptians. But remember, it's not just Egypt, it's Jacob's family and the Egyptians. So again, it's this like muddying, it's this incorporation. They're all as one. Okay, so they go and bury him. They carry him to the land of Canaan. They bury him in the field at Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, which Abraham bought in the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess a burying place. You guys remember that, Genesis 23, of course. And after he buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt and his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. So they go up, bury his father, they come back down. Now, after his brothers see that their dad's dead, his brothers start to freak out. Joseph's brothers start to freak out because it's like the one thing that was binding them together is now gone. And so they have to deceive their brother again. And they say, before your dad died, this is what he said. He said, say to Joseph, please forgive the transgressions of your brothers and their sin, because they did evil to you. And so, can you please forgive us for the transgression we did? Now Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, behold, we are servants. But Joseph said, guys, what? Don't fear. Am I in the place of God? I've forgiven you. You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So that is the verse of like the whole book of Genesis. What y'all meant for raw, God meant for good. He used it for good. Every single generation, we see people make horrendous, stupid decisions, and God turns it towards his purpose. He turns it towards his purpose, turns it towards his purpose. That is the theme of the biblical story. God constantly turning our bad decisions into something good somehow. And so, don't fear. I'll provide for you and your little ones. So thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. Now Joseph lived 110 years, and he saw Ephraim's children to the third generation, and he saw Manasseh's children too. Now Joseph said to his brothers, I'm about to die, but God will surely visit you and bring you up out of this land, the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And then he made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. Did I say 111 years before? I'm sorry. If I did, that was a misread.
110.
Okay, 110. So we have the proto-Exodus. The proto-Exodus, and then the prophesied Exodus. If you guys remember thinking back to God's covenant with Abraham, he swears, he says, surely you're going to be in a land and you're going to be oppressed. And so we're all of that's kind of in the background here. We have this family in the land of Egypt. They're technically in the garden-ish in this place called Goshen, but they're not in the promised land. They're not right where they should be. But God is going to continue blessing them. And then as we go into the book of Exodus, we're going to see what God does with this family moving forward. But you guys, we just finished Genesis. We finished Genesis. So congrats to y'all. Congrats to us.
Good
And
job.
thank you. Next time we will we'll continue or start Exodus. All right, guys, that's it for this week. I just want to thank you for listening in, and I just want to say a blessing over you. So may God bless you as you go to wherever you're going next, home, to work, whatever. I just pray that you would feel and experience God's presence. All right, thank you guys so much.